Hello and welcome to ABP Live. I have with me today Mr. A.S. Dulat. He is the former head of RAW and he has also spent about 3 decades in IB. He has come up with his memoir, which is called A Life in the Shadows. Welcome to ABP Live, sir, and thank you so much for giving us your time. So to start, the obvious question that comes in everybody's mind, you've already written the book, The Watch by Years, which gives a detailed account of, how it has been for you in Kashmir and in your other missions. But in this book, you've really dealt a lot on how you took that stride from IPS to, being in the intelligence apparatus, and how it has been for you with every finer details that one can really think of. So if you can start with that for our viewers.
Yeah, I was a youngster then, 3.5 years service, and my cadre was Rajasthan. And frankly, I was hoping to go to Punjab, where I belong. But as it so happened, Rajasthan turned out to be more than home. It was lovely people, wonderful cadre, good officers. It was a pleasure working there. But then, just about the time when I was completing my subdivision, I got a call from my IG. In those days, there were no DGs. And he said, "Oh, Home Ministry wale bula rahe hain tumhe. I think you'll be happy in Delhi. So I think you should go." I had no idea what the Home Ministry was, what the IB was. But yeah, I didn't mind the thought of living in Delhi. So we came, and one was, very young then, as I say, 3.5 years service. And so then one settled down in the Intelligence Bureau. And as I've said in this book, I was very fortunate to have shared a room with Mr. M.K. Narayanan for the first 2 years. I learned a lot sitting next to him. He wouldn't talk too much because he was so much senior. He was the senior most assistant director, and I was the junior most. And yet we shared a room for whatever reasons. And but he was very good to me, always kind, good. And as I said, watching him, I learned quite a lot.
Right.
And then one got used to the Intelligence Bureau, and then one realized that this was really a career, and there was no going back. At least I never thought of going back. I was not very comfortable in the Intelligence Bureau for the first couple of years because, we were not used to so much slogging, so much hard work that youngsters were made to do in those days. But one got used to it. I spent, normally, anybody joining the Bureau normally spends about 3 years at headquarters to learn the ropes, to learn what intelligence is. And it's important to work on the desk. But in my case, I spent 4 years. And I learned from 2 or 3 great masters. I mentioned that in the book. So by the time I got posted out, I had some idea of what intelligence was all about. But like I've said, I was clueless on what was to come in the future, which was counterintelligence. And then I spent quite a lot of time in counterintelligence, which is, to my way of thinking, really the core of intelligence work, particularly in the IB.
Counterintelligence.
Counterintelligence, yeah. So, and I did the whole spectrum of counterintelligence. Just fortunate that I dealt with every area of counterintelligence. So that was tremendous education. And then I got posted out of Bhopal. And because I was due a posting out, I was to go out in 82. I'd been posted to Lucknow, but the night I was to leave, that day my father passed away. So I stayed back and I took a bit of leave, and then they needed to send somebody else in a hurry. So I knew that I would have to go out, and 2 years later I was sent to Bhopal. And I thoroughly enjoyed Bhopal. It's again a wonderful state, wonderful people. One made a lot of friends there. Also, I, for the first time in my career and actually in my life, I began to understand the Muslim psyche, because Bhopal has a considerable Muslim population. And during our stay there in Bhopal, we had very good Muslim friends. And that gave me an insight. It was a great preparation for my going to Srinagar.
Right, right.
I didn't know I was going to go to Srinagar, but as it turned out, when I went to Srinagar, it was just as well that I was going from Bhopal because, as I say, I learnt a lot in Bhopal.
Right, right. So we'll come to the Bhopal aspect of, of your work that you've done. But first, for the benefit of our viewers, let me show the book. This is the book, Life in Shadows. So also, since whenever it comes to you, the question of Kashmir comes up and how you really saw Kashmir from a different perspective, right? You are the only probably a spy master who talks about Kashmiriyat, and you've written in your book how IB had its safe houses, but you always preferred calling the separatist leaders in your own home. So
it was unconventional.
Right.
And some of my seniors, some of my colleagues were not happy with my ways, but I still did it in my way. And I think I was quite successful.
Right.
I mean,
right.
if you allow me a little immodesty, I think it worked, because in fact, when I came back from Srinagar, I thought I was in Srinagar for less than 2 years, little less than 2 years.
Right.
And I thought that Kashmir was over, it was finished. And I was relieved because that winter of 89-90 was terrible. But it was not to be, and I was to remain hooked on to Kashmir because I was again brought back to the Kashmir desk.
Yes.
And then Kashmir never left me, and I never left Kashmir. It got into my blood, it's become an obsession. Even today, I mean, I'm not in government. I left the organization 22 years ago, and I left the PMO more than 18 years ago. But I still watch Kashmir, and I'm got so involved with it. And I love the Kashmiris. So therefore, I still have hunches, I still have gut feelings. People say, how do you know this will happen? I say, it's just a hunch. Like I've said many times, I said this in before 2008 also, that Omar Abdullah would be chief minister. And he was chief minister. And I'm saying it again, I've said it a few times, that whenever the next government is formed in Kashmir, I visualize Umar as the next chief minister again.
Okay, that's interesting. So, but then if we
Now,
start...
I have no information.
I
As
totally
I say,
agree.
This is a gut feeling.
I'm not debating
Instinct.
that at all. So, but then if we start from 1989, in a way, when you were there, you write a very interesting point in your book is the fact that the IB knew what was happening on the ground, yet it sort of started, and you call it as an intelligence failure. Now, do you think a similar situation is taking place today where we see, yes, there has been, abrogation of Article 370, but, there is a lot of simmering tension going on, and it's not really all good in Kashmir, right? So, and then there are also reports coming up of this hybrid terrorism and other things. What do you have to say to that, keeping in mind what happened in 89?
You see, it's very difficult to make these comparisons. I'm told by Kashmiris at times that things are worse than 89. I don't know. It's very difficult to say. Coming to the abrogation of 370, yeah, when it happened, I felt it was totally unnecessary because 370 was gone long ago. It was gone in 75 when Sheikh entered into the accord with Mrs. Gandhi. And he said that accession was irrevocable. No? So it was only a fig leaf. And I've always felt that why would we want to deprive the Kashmiri of this fig leaf. But now that it's done, I think it's dusted. I don't think that's such a big issue anymore. Politicians, of course, will talk about it till the courts take a final call if they do. But I think that the normal Kashmiri is, I think, reconciled to the fact that, okay, 370 is gone. What they do have in their mind is when will statehood come back? Because the government is committed to restoring statehood. This has been said in Parliament at least. So that is something that is in the Kashmiri mind. But more than that, what really troubles the Kashmiri, and I'm saying it today, but I heard this about 25 years ago, that there was a fear that the Kashmiri might be reduced to a minority in his own homeland. And, people in Delhi from time to time talk about a demographic change and things like that. So that's very troubling for the Kashmiri, And I've heard Kashmiris say that we'll have to adopt Hindu names now, that kind of thing. So these are all extreme views, but there is, we've always talked of alienation in Kashmir, but now it's much more than alienation. When I was there last in the summer, in June, it's very sad to hear, very depressing to hear Kashmiris saying that now we have no hope from Delhi.
So when you say
we don't expect anything from Delhi.
Does it resonate to what you've
written in the book? At the same time, let me say one more thing.
Sure.
You started by this. That you mentioned, I think, this muscular policy. Let me admit here that I think the muscular policy has worked. It has worked. Okay. It has worked because militancy has come down. I think infiltration has certainly reduced. There are our own boys who are involved in militancy, and some of them, like you say, are also hybrid. But it has worked. But what it will produce in the long term is for us to wait and watch and see. History will see whether it was right or wrong.
Interesting, sir, and that is what I was asking you, that does it also resonate with the fact what Farooq Abdullah had once told you, and you've mentioned in the book that Kashmir is being treated as a colony of India. But now when you say that, post-abrogation, they have reconciled to the fact and they are probably moving forward, maybe terrorism has gone down. But is there this feeling, because I was also there recently, while they have reconciled to this fact that things have changed, there is this kind of simmering frustration one can still find within the youth also. What is your analysis of that, sir?
Yeah, there is. I agree that there's discontent. I think it's more than discontent now. But let's leave it at discontent.
But you also said this is worse than 89. Why do you say that? Because
the government is also... I'm not saying that. It's for people on the ground or people involved to say whether it's worse or better. I don't know. But I've heard Kashmiris say at times that the situation is worse than 89. I don't know. This is, I don't have an answer to that. Because the government is now
planning a lot of development schemes there. They're asking for countries to come and invest there, like UAE and others. Do you think that will happen?
You see, Kashmir is not a question of investment, Let me put it like this, that in the summer there are a lot of tourists. And the Kashmiris involved in the tourist trade or the tourist business are naturally happy.
Yes.
That there are tourists. But that doesn't sort out Kashmir, because Kashmir is not an issue of tourism. It's not an issue of development. Kashmir, I think, is quite well developed. What Kashmir could do with is some more hospitals, possibly. And I have suggested this before also, that we talk about the return of Kashmiri Pandits. If some Kashmiri Pandits could take the initiative of setting up hospitals, and there are plenty of Kashmiri doctors. Kashmiri means Muslim doctors. So a Pandit hospital with a Kashmiri doctor, I think it would do Kashmiriyat a lot of good.
But when you talk about pundits also, sir, there is this very divided opinion one gets, while there's one section that really wants to go back and, start afresh maybe. Others also have, there's this threat of terrorism constantly there.
There is, of course there is.
Some are also frustrated that the government is not taking enough steps. How do you see from their perspective?
See, it's like this, that every government since 1990 has said that the pundits must go back. But they've done nothing about it, And it's not easy, let me tell you. It's not just a government job. I think it requires a reconciliation between Kashmiris, And I think the best way to get Kashmiri pundits back is to get the Kashmiri leadership involved in bringing them back. Setting up a separate colony or giving them separate jobs and all is not going to solve the problem. You need the involvement of the Kashmiri leadership, whether it is the mainstream or whether it is the meanwhiles, whatever is there. The Hurriyat is over, but I keep mentioning the meanwhiles because I feel he has a role.
That's what I was also going to ask you next, sir. Do you think that this government's stand of not engaging with the separatists, so to say?
There are no separatists now. There's only, as I see it, there is only the meanwhiles. And I think he's sufficiently mainstreamed. And whatever remains, I'm sure he would be prepared to be mainstream.
So
rather than remain locked up in his house.
So do you feel the era of Shabir Shah, Yasir Malik, Salahuddin, it's all over?
Yeah, sort of over. Yeah, it is over.
And do you think that,
That's why I keep mentioning the Mirwais.
Okay.
And when I mention the Mirwais, one of the reasons also is that he's not only somebody who is acceptable in Kashmir, but he was acceptable in Delhi, and he was acceptable even in the West, among the West, because he was English speaking, he dressed well, he looked good, he spoke very moderately.
But sir, do you think, in your time there, and you write in your previous book, Vajpayee Years, how you engaged with them, right? How you thought that they are also an important stakeholder, which has changed under this government. We see under NSA Doval, that strategy has shifted. Have you ever had any conversation with Mr. Doval on this? Or do you think now probably the new ones are coming, like this Al Farhan group?
You see, Mr. Doval is a good friend, but the conversations which I have with them, some of them I can't talk about, or I won't talk about. But yeah, he and I think differently. I'm a firm believer in engagement, and I'm not saying that he doesn't accept engagement, but he's in government and he's in the top position. So what he thinks from time to time could change,
True, and sir, but then today we see emergence of groups like Al Farhan, which is what people say is the front of Harkatul Ansar. Then there is this TRF, hybrid terrorism. Do you see these are all being, now emerging with the support from ISI is what, we get to hear. What is your analysis
Yeah,
of
the
that?
support from the ISI never goes, unless, see, this is the other part of Kashmir, that there is the Pakistan angle.
Yes.
And that the Pakistan lobby, as I've referred to it, has dwindled. There aren't so many Kashmiris now who stand for Pakistan. But they are there, quietly there, some of them. And so militancy hasn't totally gone away, nor has the ISI. And that is why I maintain that it's also important to talk to Pakistan, to engage with Pakistan. And I don't see any engagement with Pakistan happening. Our Home Minister very clearly said in Srinagar that we will not talk to Pakistan. So I guess that's one way of looking at it, that we don't need to talk to Pakistan.
But you do say that the Pakistan's lobbying there is sort of dwindling. Has that happened because of abrogation of 370, or do you think they are also sort of losing their interest?
Abrogation also has helped, but it's happened over a period of time. that the Kashmiri has realized. I'll take you back to 9/11.
Right.
You know, when 9/11 happened and Bush read the riot act to Musharraf, he said, either you're with us or you're not with us,
Right.
or you're against us.
Hmm.
And either you're going to join us in the war against terror, or so when in the Kashmiri perception at that point of time, Musharraf had caved in. And therefore, the Kashmiris said that if they can't look after themselves, how can they look after us? You know? There's no joy to be had from Pakistan. And since then, gradually, this whole Pakistan lobby has been dwindling. And now, like you said, you mentioned 370, I'll concede that 370 has helped it dwindle further. Because again, to the disappointment of Kashmir and Kashmiris, Pakistan never really took a very strong stand or a strong view on 370. And this was something that even people in Pakistan were disappointed with Imran's position. But I think that was also a period when there was something happening between India and Pakistan. You know,
The back channel.
yeah, whatever it was, Imran, Bajwa, Mohid Yusuf.
Mohid Yusuf.
Yeah, so something was happening. Today it seems to be all frozen, or at least on the surface it appears frozen. I'm sure the intelligence agencies are doing more than that.
So, but then when you talk about Pakistan, their presence dwindling, we see still a lot of influence being there, from Bahawalpur, Masood Azhar, and we see elements there still operating. How do you think that's working?
See, as I say, Pakistan is a factor. That factor has, like militancy, like the separatists, that factor has dwindled. But it is there. And unless we move forward in Kashmir, now you'll say, how do you move forward? And my view is that we need to revive the political and democratic process. Today, we are not engaging even with the mainstream leadership, you know. So there's frustration there. And if the Kashmiri leadership, the mainstream, thinks there will be elections possibly in May next year, my own feeling is that there will not be elections. It doesn't suit Delhi to have elections. And if we are going to, if we are headed for May next year, then people will start thinking of 24. So I think if there is going to be an election, it will more likely be in 24.
Well,
again, this is a view.
That will be then scary because that's what the Kashmiris are waiting for an election.
Because the Kashmiris think there will be elections next year. So I'm making that very clear. The Kashmiri leadership thinks there will be elections.
But you don't think so?
I don't think so.
And if that really happens, if the elections do not take place, how scarier can the situation be in Kashmir?
No, it's not. It won't be scary. It will be just as it is today, status quo.
Tensions will continue to simmer.
Yeah, but if we are looking at it militarily or from the point of view of law and order, I don't think we will lose very much. The question here is that, do we want to move forward politically? And if there are no takers in Delhi for that, or there is no excitement about moving forward, then it won't happen.
Interesting.
I don't say it will be a setback, but we are not moving forward. It will be status quo. And the status quo, I don't think, really suits us. When there is a solution to Kashmir, why don't we grasp it and take it forward? It stares us in the face. But
I understand, sir. But then, if I can now really also take you back to that incident of IC at 1-4, you engaged with Masood Azhar at that point. Were you able to interrogate him? How was he? What was his thinking at that time about India? And do you think that has also worsened over the years?
No, I never engaged with him. I never got a chance to talk to him.
You never were sort of given a chance to interrogate him?
No. I just brought him from Jammu to Delhi. That's all, in an aircraft. I never even looked at him, nor did he see me. So my job was just to bring him to Delhi. That's all. But I think this hijacking that happened, in retrospect, one can say that it was being planned over a period of time. Earlier also, there had been attempts made to get Masood Azhar out of the Court Bilwal. So I think maybe we didn't anticipate a hijacking, but something or the other would happen. I think that was on the cards.
But looking back, sir, do you feel was it a mistake to sort of set him free?
No, I don't think we had an option. The option was in Amritsar, where we goofed. Because that aircraft, once it landed, I mean, it was very fortunate that Captain Devi Sharan brought the plane to Amritsar. And we should never have let it go from Amritsar. That was the goof up. And Delhi blames Punjab and Punjab blames Delhi. But I still think the goof up was in Delhi.
So there's also an interesting part in your book where you talk about the fact that how Kashmiri separatists at that point of time, especially people like Shabir Shah, used to engage via Nepal, right? At one point, he wanted to cross over and meet somebody in Kathmandu. How do you see, even today, Nepal plays that role when it comes to, the Pakistan lobby, operating there in an invisible manner, so to say?
I really wouldn't know how strong that lobby is. I've served in Kathmandu, incidentally. There's a chapter on Nepal. I was there 76 to 80. And the Pakistan embassy, there was a pisky little thing. There was an ambassador and a third secretary. So they had no influence at that time. If there is influence today, it's grown over a period of time. And it's grown possibly because of the fact that we haven't really been able to consolidate, I would say, our relationship with Nepal. The Nepalese always look to India for everything, particularly money and infrastructure and things. And I've always felt, having seen Nepal, that we should always have treated Nepal as one of our states, provided whatever they wanted.
But then we do, right, sir?
No, we don't do
with
enough.
An open border and
we don't do enough.
having a
we haven't
friendship
done
treaty.
enough. We don't treat it like Bihar and Uttar Pradesh.
Okay.
That's my point.
But what is it that you think needs to be done to make them feel like that?
Whatever they want, almost whatever they want. This has to obviously be worked out. But
But then
what
they
I'm
say that
trying,
India
what
is
I'm trying
interfering
to,
in their
what I'm
internal
trying to,
matters.
now we don't need to interfere in the internal matters. Even the Kashmiris don't like you to interfere in the internal matters. But Kashmir is still an integral part of India. In the case of Nepal, we don't have to say it's an integral part of India, but you could treat it like a part of India. Befriend it like a part of India. That's what I'm trying to get at. So that the Chinese now, who are all over Nepal, would not have come in so freely. That's the point I'm trying to make. You see, the Chinese, when I was there till 1980, the Chinese were just beginning to creep in. But they are now, they are solidly there. And now we have another communist government in Nepal. So I think Delhi will have a few more things to think about.
Right, sir. I mean, you mean PM Prachanda coming in power there again. But then, sir, coming to the China angle, which is very crucial in today's day and age, as you rightly said earlier, China never sort of factored in India's scheme of things when it came to Kashmir or Pakistan policy. But now...
Also in Nepal.
Also in Nepal. But now that's the main factor when it comes to POK.
So that brings me to this, again, the question of engagement. I think we need to engage with China much more seriously and consistently. It should be a dialogue that should never end.
But do you think that's possible, considering what is
Why
going
not?
on between us also bilaterally with LSE burning?
Yeah, that happened. Now, our government says nothing happened there, but certain things did happen. The army did have some setbacks, and we did suffer there. But whatever you suffered, whatever has happened on the border has happened. Now, I don't think either side wants a war. We certainly don't want a war, and I don't think China wants a war. So, what is the way forward? The way forward is through diplomacy, to engage, to talk.
But
You
so
see,
does
we look at it like this, that the Chinese and the Pakistanis are one. They are one because you keep both out. We don't talk to Pakistan and we don't talk sufficiently to China. And these are two very important neighbors, one more powerful than the other.
But does that make for India the Kashmir issue all the more complex? And then we have our
Not exactly, not exactly. I think Kashmir is, I won't say out of it, but sufficiently out of it as far as we are concerned. Yeah. Kashmir has no link with China. And the link with Pakistan, as I said, is dwindling. But at the same time, if we were to engage with Pakistan, I think it would help.
so do you think, as you are saying, that to engage with Pakistan now, we need to engage now China as well? They're also there in the
Yeah,
table.
China is more important just now. Because there are people in Delhi who feel that why do we need to engage with Pakistan? What's the big deal? And maybe I could go along with that. Okay, there's no big deal if you don't feel like, if you don't think there are any benefits. But China is much more crucial today, especially after what happened in eastern Ladakh. So, I don't think we can ignore China at any cost.
But sir, then we've seen over the years, there's been so many dialogues that have happened with China. There was a separate special representative track also that of course has not met for many years now, since 2019. But then it's not easy also to deal with the Chinese Communist Party, right? And now with President Xi Jinping probably having a lifelong term, so to say. Do you think?
But didn't he have something like 18 meetings with Modi ji?
Yes, of course.
So
they
then-
did. They had informal meetings also. The
Informal,
summits.
whatever they were. They were on a Jula together also. So, the point I'm trying to make is that diplomacy doesn't end. It's a continuous process. It must go on. Engagement must go on. Why do we have an ambassador in Beijing? To engage. You got to build on it. Maybe we need a special envoy on China or something. Somebody, like you said, we had at one time. So we should, who would just constantly engage with China. It can be at the NSA's level, or the NSA can depute one of his deputies or whatever it is, but it should continue. It needs to be a continuous process.
Sir,
Because the moment you stop talking, then the other side starts thinking of other options,
Right.
That's my point with Pakistan also, that if now that militancy has come down, now that infiltration has come down, now that things are looking better for us militarily, if we were to engage with Pakistan, it might make things even better. But when we don't, then quite often mischief is afoot, and
so, but then what
there's
this?
cussedness also that comes in. For instance, let me take you back to the attack on Parliament and also 26/11. We've never been able to pinpoint. We know that the Lashkar was involved, in 26/11, and probably the Jaish in the attack on Parliament. But who gave the orders? Where did it come from? And sometimes I feel that it might have come out of Musharraf's frustrations. Once Agra failed, Musharraf was a disappointed person.
But then Prime Minister Modi also tried, no, sir? I mean, he landed in Lahore and he met Nawaz Sharif.
Yeah, we always come back to what we did. There are things which Pakistan also does. After all, Mia Saab came here for Modi ji's swearing in.
Right.
Yeah. So these are things. The question is, you got to work out the pros and cons of what are the benefits of engaging with Pakistan, the benefits of engaging with China. Because, we have been concentrating a lot on the United States. Now that relationship, as I see it, has been constantly improving since Prime Minister Vajpayee's time.
Right.
I was there in the PMO then. I saw it improving, I saw it growing, and then it grew much more during Dr. Manmohan Singh's time with the signing of the nuclear deal and all. And it has gone on like that. Great. We should have a good relationship with the Americans. But America is so far away.
Right.
The neighbors are more important. These are people you got to deal with on an everyday basis. I think Putin is more important than the Americans. Russia always has been a friend of India's.
Well, that we have
The Americans are generally on the wrong side.
that we saw in the while this Russia-Ukraine war is ongoing, sir. But that's what I was going to ask you next. Do you think the Kashmir, in the Kashmir scheme of things, or maybe just India, Pakistan, is US sort of still there, or it has washed its hands off, and you believe now China is the player that you need to deal more seriously with?
I think definitely China is a more serious player. I think Russia is a more serious player because both of them have a good relationship. The other thing is that the Russian relationship with Pakistan has improved in the last few years. It's become a much stronger relationship. The moment you start ignoring a big power, then they will compensate for it somewhere else, And Russia, again, is important for us. And I think the government and Modi ji have taken the right position on the Ukraine war. But we are neutral. We do keep telling Putin that war is not the solution, which is right. But even the great Henry Kissinger has said and admitted that, Ukraine is not helping the United States. Actually, how NATO will come out of this, I don't know. But the Europeans are not happy. And they are being squeezed. And this is going to be a very cold winter in Britain and in Europe.
That's true.
I'm told there are power cuts of 8 hours and things now.
Yes.
It's such a power shortage.
Severe energy crisis.
Yeah.
How do you see that gas leak tragedy? Do you think that was also an utter failure from the government's part, or do you think it'll ever have a closure?
No, it's more or less closed in the sense that there are only people who, a lot of people died at that time. It was very sad, very tragic. And most of the people who died were from the Juggi Jhopri dwellers and very poor people. So
They had no wherewithal to fight. They had no wherewithal to fight.
Yeah. Also, the Union Carbide factory was located in that area where the poorer sections, all the area around it was really Juggi Jhopri and poor people, and a lot of them were Muslims. So it was very sad. I think there's a bit of carelessness on the part of the government, because the real problem there was that nobody knows when Union Carbide actually got a license to start producing MIC in the factory in Bhopal. Because initially, the license was for these small containers to come.
Right.
And these were being used for manufacturing pesticides, 7 in particular, I was told. Now, somewhere along the line, because the Union Carbide thought that if we do it here, it'll be cheaper or whatever, they got permission from the government, nobody knows when, and they started doing it there. And there had been accidents earlier in the factory. A couple of people had died. So this was a disaster in a sense which was waiting to happen.
There was no intelligence on that
Intelligence?
as to what they were producing.
Intelligence, I was only 4 months in Bhopal, and nobody there in our setup knew about it. I am telling you, people who've lived all their lives in Bhopal didn't know about this. So that is why I'm saying there was an element of callousness, that people in the government who knew hadn't informed anybody else. In a situation like this, most of all, you needed a disaster management group constantly to be available in Bhopal, but there was nothing. There was not even a crisis management group. So that is the tragedy of Bhopal. And, I lived through that period. Yes. Bhopal was like a ghost town. Everybody ran away. For about a week, it was deserted. For me, to get from my house to the office normally took me 20-25 minutes because I had to go through the city. But in those days, because there was nobody, I used to get to my office in 5 to 7 minutes.
So, also, if I can ask you, and this is just to quickly wrap up our conversation, the very interesting part that I feel in your book was your time with former President Gyani Zail Singh. And how you write very fondly the kind of warmth he had, the charm he had, the knowledge that he had, and how sort of he's been written off, and the fact that he's been kind of mocked by the media to a certain extent, but he was also upset with what happened with in the Operation Blue Star. So if you can shed some light on that.
No, he was a wonderful person, and I thoroughly enjoyed my 5 years with him because I traveled the world with him. Wherever he went, it was just a coincidence. Like I said, I was due to go to Lucknow, and because of circumstances, I took leave and stayed back. And suddenly, Gyani ji, after he became president, developed a heart problem. And his cardiologist advised him surgery. And they said the best place was to go to Houston. So he had to go to Houston. And whenever the president travels, there is an officer from the intelligence bureau who travels with him as his security officer. So
he used to say, "Isse bach ke rehna." He used to point towards you and say, "Isse bach ke rehna."
That was Gyani ji's style. So the DIB was looking for somebody, and I was at a loose end, and I was Punjabi speaking. So he thought I would fit in with Gyani ji. And I fitted in quite well, I think, because after that, Gyani wouldn't let go of me. And he was very good to me, I must admit. And he was a wonderful human being. Blue Star changed a lot of things, having watched Gyani ji from close quarters, he was so beholden to the family. And the Gandhi family, that, at one time he made that statement that even if I'm asked to sweep the floor by Mrs. Gandhi, I'll do it. But Blue Star sort of shocked him. And then he was never really the same. And somehow after Mrs. Gandhi's assassination, and he feared for her life, I can tell you this, like she feared for her own life. Gyani ji was also conscious that she faced a threat, and he feared for her life. And so when Mr. Rajiv Gandhi became Prime Minister. The relationship,
Quite uneasy.
yeah, it was not good, whatever the reasons were, but it was an uncomfortable, uneasy relationship.
Well, thank you so much, sir, for all those details. For more interesting details, of course, you need to grab this copy of this book, A Life in the Shadows, by Mr. Dulat. He's been the former RAW chief. Thank you so much, sir, for
Thanks a
speaking
lot.
to ABP Live.
Thanks for
Thank
your
you for your
patience.
time.
Yeah,
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Keep watching ABP Live. For ABP Live, this is Nayanima, Basu.